I'm so excited for Wilson. I am ready for a week of reading Jacqueline Wilson. I do have some catching up to do because the readathon started on the 13th and it runs from the 13th to the 20th, but on the 13th I was still reading my steamy romances for my steamy romance reading vlog, which went up on the 14th, Valentine's Day. So I missed out on one day of Jacqueline Wilson reading, but I could not bring myself to read a Jacqueline Wilson book and a steamy romance in the same day. I just feel like my brain would have exploded from like the mixed messages. But it is the 14th today and we had our reading sprints this morning and I started my first book for the Wilsathon and I'm so ready. And this is a little TBR that I've set myself. I did talk about this in my announcement video, but there's been a few additions since then because I bought some books. And there's currently 7 books on here, which sounds like a lot because 7 books for a 7-day readathon sounds like 1 book a day. But for a few of Jacqueline Wilson's ones, they're very short. Like these, I'm pretty sure I could read like 2 in a day because I'm unemployed. That's the thing, if I get to the end of this readathon, it's like, oh my god, you read so much, wow, you're so dedicated. No, it's just a pandemic and I don't have a job. So let's look back at our little prompt card that Shar made for us, and there's honestly no need to feel beholden to these prompts. These are just a few ideas to get you started. You can read 1 book for 1 prompt, you can follow all 9 of the prompts, you can just read whatever you want as long as it's Jacqueline Wilson. So the books that I picked out for my announcement video for my TBR did follow a few of the prompts, so I'm just going to run over what I picked for certain prompts in my announcement video. And the first one is My Mum Tracy Beaker, which I got off of Depop for cheap. And this fulfills the prompt, a book that you haven't read yet, and I started it this morning. Enjoying it so far. And while we're talking about Miss Tracy Beaker, can we just appreciate this incredible hoodie that Karis found on Etsy? She bought one, I bought one, we now have matching Tracy Beaker hoodies. It's a vibe, I'm here for it, I'm gonna live in this thing this whole week. And whilst I was trawling through the Jacqueline Wilson tag on Depop looking for this book, I also found out that it has a sequel, which I didn't know, and it's called We Are the Beaker Girls, which gives me Cheeky Girls flashbacks, but we're gonna forget about that, which I also haven't read. And so obviously this is book 1, this is book 2, following Tracy and her daughter Jess, and it would be fun to read both of these. So obviously I don't have to read both of these to fulfill 1 prompt, just reading 1 will do, and I'm definitely going to read My Mum Tracy Beaker because I really want to watch the adaptation for My Mum Tracy Beaker, which comes out this week on CBBC. It's amazing. I can't believe we timed this so perfectly that the readathon is happening as My Mum Tracy Beaker is coming out on CBBC. I am so ready, but of course I want to read the book first. So I'm kicking off the readathon by reading My Mum Tracy Beaker so that I can watch the adaptation as soon as humanly possible and not get spoiled for it on Twitter. And then I might leave reading this one towards the end of the week once I've fulfilled some of the other prompts. The next prompt, which I'm super excited about, is rereading an old favourite, and that is My Sister Jodie, and I'm very excited to read this one. And I thought of My Sister Jodie as my favourite for years, and I think it's simply because it made such an impression on me. If you've read this book, you'll know that there is a very big, shocking ending, and I don't know if it's stuck in my brain because it's actually my favourite or just because it had such an impactful and shocking ending. So I'm excited to go and reread this one and see what I think of it now and if it like holds up to the image I have of it in my head. I do really love the cover for this one. This could also fulfill the cover with your favourite colour prompt because I love purple, but we're using this for the reread your favourite prompt, so getting ahead of myself. And for the books for older readers prompt, I'm going to be reading Girls in Love because I was so scandalised by this when I was a kid. I convinced my mum to let me read it because it was Jacqueline Wilson. I knew full well it was too old for me. I read it anyway. I remember loving it, and I don't know if it was because it was good. I mean, it's Jacqueline Wilson, it's probably good, or just because I was scandalised. So I'm really excited to go back to this one, especially because obviously I'm older now. I've read a lot of YA, I've read a lot of fanfic, so I want to see how this holds up and how scandalous it really is, you know? I think since probably watching shows like Skins and Waterloo Road in my teens, whatever happens in this is not going to be nearly as scandalous as I thought it was back when I read it at like 7 years old. For the read a bedtime story or like read in bed prompt, I wanted to go with Sleepovers, which is a really sweet, cute little book. It's literally like 100 pages long. I'm gonna get through this in like half an hour, and it's just about this group of girls called the Alphabet Club, and each of their names starts with a letter of the alphabet, but it's like A, B, C, D or whatever. They all have those names. I'm awful at explaining that. Just read the back, Anna. All of Daisy's friends are in the alphabet club. Amy, Bella, Chloe and Emily have had sleepovers for their birthdays. Right, yeah, Daisy's friends, so it's Amy, Bella, Chloe, Daisy, Emily. This shouldn't be this hard. I'm 23 years old. But I remember really loving this, and it's a short and sweet one. And I was so into sleepovers just as a concept. Like, I would just hype myself up for sleepovers as a kid. It was like an event. I would spend like the week before the sleepover like accumulating snacks, packing toys, like preparing in my head what movies we were gonna watch, and I would just like pack up too much stuff and like show up to someone's house like, hello, I'm ready, let's pack as much fun as we can into every single second. So yeah, I'm very excited to get all nostalgic about sleepovers, and since, you know, it's a pandemic, I've not had a sleepover in a very long time, so this is definitely needed. For the books for younger readers prompt, I picked out Double Act, and I'm not sure why, this just called out to me. I remember really enjoying this one because obviously it's about sisters, and I've spoken before on the channel about my intense love of sisters in fiction because I grew up as a little lonely only child, and I love seeing sisters like that dynamic in books and films. And I also remember that this has like a performing arts element, so they both audition for this like school play or like a performing arts school, and then only one of them gets in, and it's like drama. So I've picked this one just because I have fond memories of it. And lastly, I've picked How to Survive Summer Camp, and this is a really strange copy. It's obviously not illustrated by Nick Sharratt. It doesn't have like the usual font. It's a different publisher. Her publisher is Corgi Yearling on the other ones, and this one is Oxford University Press, so I have no idea where I got my hands on this one, but I have really fond memories of this book. It's about a girl that goes to summer camp. She's really nervous about it, and she takes like one of her favorite books, and I remember like the description of this book so clearly in my head. It's like a fairy tale book, and like she describes the tracing paper in between the pages to like protect the illustrations, and like how much she adores this book, and she takes it with her to summer camp so that, you know, she feels comforted and safe. And then I remember being really stressed, being like, why would you take such a valuable thing with you to summer camp? But I remember I had like a brownies residential trip when I was a kid, and I was really nervous to go. It was like my first time away from home without a member of my family being there, and I think I took this book with me to like bring me some comfort. So it's like a little nice memory, and it fulfills the book with your favorite colour on the cover prompt because it is purple. So yeah, this is a little stack of books that I'm going to try and make my way through over the course of this week, and I will of course be updating you on my progress and letting you in on some of the other prompts, which are to eat some childhood snacks, watch an adaptation, just have a jolly good time. So yeah, without further ado, let Wilsathon commence. I feel like I'm at the Triwizard Cup, you know, like, let the games begin. Good morning. Well, I say morning, it's like 12 p.m. So not morning at all. Last night I finished, I also say last night, I mean in the early hours of this morning, I finished My Sister Jodie, my first reread of the readathon and my second book. So it's currently Thursday, so this readathon has been going on since Saturday. See, the thing is, I didn't start reading books for the readathon until Sunday, so in my head it's like Sunday till Sunday. But it's not. It's Saturday till Saturday, and it's Thursday now, which means I only have 2 days left. Well, 3 including today, but I gotta get a move on because I've only read 2 books. So my reread of My Sister Jodie was a lot. Everyone has talked about how harrowing the ending is and how nervous they were to go back to it because of the ending and how much the ending had impacted them and like stuck with them when they read it as a kid. And actually the ending is like foreshadowed in quite a big way on the very first page and also throughout the book. So I was a bit like, oh wow, that definitely went over my head. I'm kind of glad that I've reread it so that I could pick up on that. Also, like, Jodie was 13. In my head, she was older simply because she was portrayed as this, like, flirty, seductive, cool girl that was going out partying and drinking. She's 13, and basically their parents get new jobs at this kind of boarding school place, and they stay there for the summer, but then when school starts in September, you realise that Jodie's going into year 8. Year 8! That's baby! That's, like, baby! Like, I was still watching Sunday morning cartoons and, like, colouring in year 8. Like, I was a baby. I also don't remember how, like, abusive Jodie's mum is. Like, it's not really addressed very much, but there are a few scenes where she hits Jodie, and it's, like, obviously not condoned, but it's just not really dealt with in a big way, and it is kind of like a throwaway thing of, like, well, the mum grew up in a rough family, so I mean that's not trying to excuse it, but like it kind of gives like a reason for it, but she's not like violent towards Pearl, so Jodie's younger sister, so it's a bit like don't like that, poor Jodie. Another thing I loved about rereading this is that I got a lot more of the literary references. I mean, I knew from, reading Jackie Daydream, which is what I talked about in my, Jacqueline Wilson, my favourite books video. I talked about the audiobook for Jackie Daydream, which I'm obsessed with, simply because it's where I get all my trivia from. Jacqueline Wilson talks a lot about the books that influenced her, and you can definitely see that when you go back to reading her books. Because I've listened to that audiobook, like, almost every week for like the past couple of years. It just helps me when I need to sleep. I know it so well that I don't need to actually listen to it, but it's just great background noise and it's so calming. But going back to this, I saw so many of the stories from Jackie's life that, make it into her work. Specifically in this book, the one where they go to the attic of the school and they find all of the costumes, and that is an actual story from Jackie's life when she was at school and she worked as like a hall monitor, and she found a secret room in her school and they found all the costumes from the school plays. And also in this book there are lots of literary references to like The Secret Garden and What Katie Did and Heidi, and I haven't read all of them, but like when I was a kid I definitely didn't pick up on all of the references and how they were similar. Like, I think they're probably titles that I'd heard before, but now that I'm older I have a lot more awareness of like what those stories are. And I've also read The Secret Garden like last year, so it was kind of nice to see that like paralleled in this story as well, because obviously there's this big manor and it's called Melchester College, and obviously like the manor from The Secret Garden is called Misselthwaite Manor, so like there's some nice little parallels in there, and I do like the kind of intertextuality that inhibits a lot of Jacqueline Wilson books. And Little Women is mentioned, and obviously this is a book about sisters, and I love the aspect of this story where I think it's Mrs. Wilberforce, who is the headmaster's wife, and she is bound to a wheelchair, and she lends Pearl all of these books, and she talks about how kind of sad she is in all of the books where she's kind of represented as a disabled person. So like What Katie Did or Heidi, the story always ends with the disabled person like magically cured and staring off into the sunset, and she's this kind of bitter woman, but she's not like demonized for her bitterness. It's like very valid, and she lives a kind of solitary, sad life. But all in all, I'm really glad that I revisited this. I mean, obviously what stuck in my head was the relationship between the two sisters. That's the main crux of the book, obviously, but I really enjoyed reading about Mrs. Wilberforce and her, you know, experience and her kind of feelings and the books that she talked about and what meant a lot to her. I saw Jodie in like a very different light being older now. Like before I thought she was so cool and like that's what I want to be, but now I'm like, she was a baby and she was so objectified by so many of like the men in her life, and it was really gross. And yeah, God. So yeah, I really enjoyed my first reread of this readathon, and I need to get a move on because it is Thursday, which means I only have 2 more full days and like 3 days, including today, to read the rest of the 5 books on my TBR. So on Thursday, with 3 days to go, this is where we are. I've completed 4 prompts, I believe, so I've reread my favourite book. I've read a book that was new to me, which is My Mum Tracy Beaker. I watched an adaptation, which was the adaptation of My Mum Tracy Beaker, and I ate my favourite childhood snack whilst watching that adaptation, which was Kinder Bueno and cheesy triangles. And yes, they do go well together. I will not hear anything different. So the next book I'm going to be picking up is Girls in Love, because similar to my sister Jodie, I think I will feel differently about it reading it as a grown-up, because I think when I was a kid I definitely romanticized Jodie and how cool she was, and I think I probably romanticized these girls and thought they were the coolest, and now I'm probably going to read it back and be like, they're just young and stupid and babies. Oh goodness. Good morning, another reading vlog, another pajama setup. I feel less schlubby though because these are new pajamas that I've just put on. They're not the same pajamas that I've been wearing in like my last 2 reading vlogs. It's Sunday the 21st of February, which means that Wilsathon is over. It finished yesterday and it's very sad. I already miss it and it just ended. And I finished one of my books from Wilsathon this morning, but I'm low-key counting it anyway because I didn't even start reading my Jacqueline Wilson books until last Sunday. I started a day late, so I feel like I can finish a day late. It's still been a week, and also like Sunday just has the Jacqueline Wilson vibes, so I feel like it fits. It's alright. It's not sacrilege, it's okay. And here is the little stack of books that I managed to get through this week, and there are 6 books in my little pile, and not all of them are ones that were on my TBR. Most of them are, but the one that is different is Midnight by Jacqueline Wilson, obviously. And I read this for the read a book with your favourite colour on the cover prompt, and obviously my favourite colour is purple, and the book that I had been intending to read for this prompt was How to Survive Summer Camp, and I just kind of changed my mind. Like, not that that book is bad, but I did my kind of favourites video that was uploaded, you know, during the week, and I talked about Midnight in my favourites video, and I was thinking like, I really want to reread this. It's such a strange book that just, you know, is calling out to me. It sticks in the mind because it is so dark, and that's what I found rereading it. I was like, this is so daring for like a kid's book to kind of be this dark. And Jacqueline Wilson has a category of her books which is for older readers, and this isn't in that. This is like aimed at children, and it is quite dark. So we follow Violet, and her older brother is really quite awful to her. He's just found out he's adopted, and he's obviously kind of going through the motions of that, and he's quite angry and spiteful. But even before he found out, he played these really horrific games with Violet where he would blindfold her and scare her, and it seemed that he was like enjoying seeing her scared, and she loved him, but she was kind of afraid of him too, and she wasn't allowed to speak to him at school, otherwise he would get angry, and just a kind of weird, toxic situation. And it's quite bleak all the way throughout, and Violet has this author that she's so obsessed with called Casper Dream, and he writes books about fairies and this magical world of fairies and fantastical things, and a real high point of this book is actually the illustrations, and there's a little letter from the author at the beginning from Jacqueline Wilson, not from Casper Dream, and she writes about how the fairy illustrations in this book are some of her favourites that Nick Sharratt has ever done, and each character illustration of each fairy lines up with a character in the book, so the fairy illustrations parallel with the characters in the book. So there's like a big angry ogre fairy that like is either her brother or her dad, and there's like these two kind of argumentative fairies that are always bickering, and they represent her parents, and then there's this like beautiful amazing blonde fairy, and that represents this new girl at school that Violet kind of develops like not an obsession but like a kind of fascination with, and she wants to be friends with her. So I really like that element of the book, the fact that Violet is using these fairy stories as her escape, and they are paralleling her real life, and that's why I guess they chime so well with her. And I guess the overall message in this very bleak book is that fantasy worlds can be our escape, and they can offer a temporary way out or a window out of your situation until you're old enough to kind of find a more permanent solution. And I really like that. I really love that message, and I think, like I said, it's so daring for a kid's book to be that bleak. There isn't this big happy ending where her brother suddenly turns nice and her parents stop arguing. And looking back, I think this is the highlight of the readathon for me, just because I hadn't remembered, I guess, the kind of tone of it as much, and it did surprise me. I think it is a book that will stay with you no matter what age that you read it. It is just so kind of sad, but also melancholy and hopeful and strange and scary at times. And so yeah, I'm really glad I made the decision to switch this with the other purple book I'd intended to read. And I've already spoken about My Sister Jodie, so I could put that one to the side too. Yes, and then the next two that I read, literally I read both of these in the course of a day. I was having like a little marathon, was Girls in Love and then Sleepovers. I really enjoyed returning to the world of Girls in Love, and I need to track down the next 3 books. I think I've got Girls in Tears, but I want to read them in order. I think when I was a kid I read them out of order. I just read them when I found them in libraries or bookshops or whatever. I don't think I ever sat down and like read them as a series, and I kind of want to do that now. And looking back, yes, there is some language in here that we no longer use. I think the T slur is used in this book. That stuck out to me, obviously. And there is a lot of discussion around weight. The main character, Ellie, she sees herself as overweight, and there's obviously some kind of disparaging language when referring to herself. Some might deem it as fat phobic. Like, I understand why some people who've struggled with weight and weight issues and body image in the past might read this and be triggered, and that's definitely something to look out for, because I think one of the books, I think it's Girls Under Pressure, deals with diets and trying to get a better body, and all of the girls do these really harmful diets, and it tackles that kind of eating disorder issue among teenagers. But unless you're triggered by that specifically, I wouldn't say stay clear of this book, because even though it can be deemed as offensive, I think it is also accurate to that teenage mindset. I mean, I know that I wasn't the kindest to myself, or even my peers at times. There are dark times as a teenager, and you want to lash out at yourself and the world around you, and you're so full of anger and insecurity, and I think Jacqueline Wilson really nails that. For example, like, Ellie has such a low opinion of herself. Like, she doesn't think that she's pretty. She thinks her 2 best friends are way prettier than her. They're much better at chatting with boys than she is, and she really thinks that like she's not worth it. She's never gonna fall in love. She's not hot. She's not cool. She doesn't know how to dress. She's too overweight. She's too this. She's too that. She has too many spots, and it's just never gonna work out for her. But then she still gets really upset when her friends, get boyfriends before her, and she's like, wait, like, I can't believe they got a boyfriend before me. And she's like outraged by this, and you're like, wait, how can you think that you're not deserving of love but then also be outraged when a boy picks your friends over you? And I think Jacqueline Wilson really nails that like contradictiveness of being a teen. Like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, when you're a teenager you can feel like two completely opposing emotions at the exact same time, and I remember that so clearly. Like, I would be really like anxious and upset at one thing, and then I could also be really excited and eager for it at the same time. She perfectly nails that dichotomy of like being really insecure but then also really self-absorbed and like almost narcissistic at the same time. It's a very hard balancing act, I think, to do this well in a book that is so short and so like accessible, and I think she does it really well. I would just be mindful of, if eating disorders and, you know, weight loss and body image is a trigger for you, just be wary of that when going into this book. And also I think the second one, because that is a much bigger focus of girls under pressure, I believe. And then Sleepovers, I don't really know what to say about this apart from that it's great. Obviously it's for very little kids. It's only like 100 pages long, the font is quite big, and it's just about this group of 5 friends, and they're called the Alphabet Club, and it's like Amy, Bella, Chloe, Daisy, Emily and they make up the Alphabet Club, and then they each have like a birthday sleepover at each person's house, and it's just like a play-by-play of each sleepover. But there are also some other themes in there, like the main girl, Daisy. Yeah, it's Daisy. The main girl, Daisy, her older sister is disabled and she can't walk or kind of speak properly, and she's really nervous about all the girls coming to her house for the sleepover because she doesn't know how they're going to react to her sister. And again, Jacqueline Wilson nails that kind of conflict of where, you know, Daisy really loves her sister and wants her sister to be involved with her friends, but she's also nervous about what her friends will think of her, and she doesn't want, you know, to be embarrassed in front of her friends, and she doesn't want her sister to embarrass herself in front of her friends. It's really important that we have like positive depictions of disabled people and disabilities in books, but Jacqueline Wilson never shies away from the harder side of it. For example, you know, Daisy feeling like embarrassed when her sister like wets herself in public and things like that, and that's obviously something that, you know, is very hard to do right. Obviously her older sister doesn't mean it, you know, she's disabled, she can't help it. And so I think Jacqueline Wilson really manages to strike that balancing act between like a realistic, loving portrayal, but also not shying away from kind of the more fractious moments of that kind of relationship. And she does it all in a kid's book in 100 pages. I don't understand. This might not be one that I would recommend like my fellow 20-year-olds to read, but I think if you know, you grew up with Jacqueline Wilson and you have young kids now, this is quite a good one to like introduce to them quite early on, because yeah, it's fun and it's sweet, but it also doesn't shy away from bigger topics and issues. Also, one of the girls in the friendship group is kind of a bully, and she's very mean to Daisy, and she keeps trying to like push her out of the group. Quite familiar with that feeling, I'm not gonna lie. So yeah, it just deals with a lot in a very short space of time. So if you've got young kids that are kind of just making their first forays into reading, this might be a good one to put in their hands. And I started the week with My Mom Tracy Beaker, and then I ended the week with We Are the Beaker Girls, and I came full circle, and then this fulfilled my books for younger readers prompt. So obviously I read other books that could fulfill that prompt, but I'd read those for other prompts, so this was my book for younger readers prompt, which was meant to be double act, but I just wanted to end the week with the one that I started with, like a nice little full circle moment. And I really enjoyed both of these installments in the Tracy Beaker saga, in her life story. I think, again, Jacqueline Wilson does a great job of being like realistic but also giving you kind of happy nostalgia. So Tracy's life isn't amazing, right? You know, when Tracy was a kid in the dumping ground, she dreamed of being rich and famous and having this lavish lifestyle, and she low-key sort of gets it in My Mom Tracy Beaker when she meets this man and like they start dating, Sean Godfrey, and he is like an ex-footballer and he's quite rich, and they have this lavish lifestyle for a while, and Tracy's like, all my dreams are coming true, but then, you know, Jacqueline Wilson, that never kind of stays for very long. And Tracy has kind of had odd jobs, and she never managed to get a degree and stick it out through university, so she's quite accurate about the fact that, you know, Tracy, yes, has a great life and a great daughter and is positive about things, but also she still struggles. She doesn't have a lot of money. She isn't able to provide all the stuff that she wants for her daughter, for Jess. But yeah, again, take a shot every time I say balancing act in this video, but Jackie Wilson definitely manages to balance the happy, nostalgic, I want to see my childhood faves grown up and happy, but then also not shying away from the fact that, you know, she's not rich and famous, she didn't get everything she wanted, and she's still someone who has anger issues from being in the care system and has issues with authority, and that's never really going to go away because that's just who Tracy is. And then we see that through the eyes of her daughter, who, you know, gets embarrassed when Tracy kicks off at like a teacher or somebody at the pub or whatever. But yeah, if you grew up on Tracy Beaker, I think these will be very fulfilling to you. It's just nice to see Tracy again, and then, like I said, it's just nice to see where she's ended up, and also, you know, how her child deals with like having Tracy Beaker for a mum, because yeah, she's a handful. And so that means I have fulfilled every single prompt on our little prompt card except for one, which was the do a doodle inspired by a Jacqueline Wilson book, and I think it's a damn shame to just leave one measly little prompt not finished. So I'm gonna try and do one now. Very last minute, as is fashion for me. I love the illustrations in Midnight, all of the fairy ones, so I'm going to try and do one now. Maybe I shouldn't have picked the fairies, they're quite intricate. I fucked up already. Oh my god, no. Oh Lord, I cannot draw. Right, that's as good as it's gonna get, isn't it, for 5-minute drawing? That I did art A level. I should be ashamed of myself. The drawing was not my strong point. Okay, I think I'm making it worse. She says, still going over it. Okay, I'm gonna stop. So this is what it was supposed to look like. There's Nick Sharrett's beautiful illustration of the Violet Fairy. And there's my 5-minute sketch that is not good. But there we go. Now I can tick off every single prompt on the Wilson prompt card. I have done my doodle inspired by a book. So with my shitty drawing in the bag, I think that is everything I have to say, and Wilson is officially over. I had so much fun, and I hope that if you joined in with us that you had fun too. Please let me know what books you read and what prompts you hit and all of that good stuff in the comments. I would love to hear from you and talk about Jacqueline Wilson for as long as I possibly can. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you soon with another video soon. Bye.